Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call.
In battle I will fall. Hear me, brothers, gather up the wolves. To battle we will ride. War drums echo the beating heart, pounding from inside. Storm, black clouds fill the sky. Earth, hear my battle cry. Fire, and thunder will bring forth death from the power of the to the Warsaw clan, to no man will I kneel. Feel the power and the energy, born of black blood, honor and steel. I feel the fire burning in my veins, the lightning strikes at my command. A storm in earth, axe and fire, we come to claim this land. Storm, black clouds fill the sky. Earth, hear my battle cry. Fire, thunder will bring forth death from the power of the
Now I know that was a lot of amazing art, and you guys are probably like, wow, that was a lot. Well, I got to tell you, that is only the tiniest fraction of the new art that you're going to see in the Cataclysm expansion. I'd also let you know that for coming to this panel, you're going to see a special treat. Near the end of this panel, we're going to show you something that's never been seen before in the entire world. So stick around, is what I'm saying. Now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Eric Browning, lead prop artist on World of Warcraft.
Hi. One of the things that the prop team is tasked with doing is making what's called a culture kit. And a culture kit is all the objects that the designers use to describe a certain culture. And it could include things, but it's not limited to the following list. Oh, and this is the name of my presentation: Making Art for a Really Old New Faction That Doesn't Exist Yet. The greatest prop ever made. Gary may show you something you've never seen before, but I'm going to show you the greatest prop ever made.
Nice.
So just stay till the end of mine, and then you can leave. So we could be making machines, spells, bombs, carts, tents, paintings, torches, chandeliers, chests, and tables, and wagons, and crates, and bones, food, plates, other chests, magical thingies, gnomish doohickeys, spider webs, statues, more chests, coral, different chests, new chests, urns, candles, burning piles of stuff, gems, tombstones, PHGC, potentially harmful goblin contraptions, cannons, fences, gates, lanterns, rugs, and soup. So when the expansion was still known as Worldbreaker, work began on the Twilight's Hammer kit. Now, from the beginning, they were going to be the face of the expansion in a lot of ways, with an entire zone and dungeon devoted to them. So what was once Cho'Gall and his clan is now an enormous world-hating cult that involves all of the races of Azeroth, as far as I know, all of them. So because of that, we assumed that we could use existing art, because we're using all existing cultures. So we figured we could just do some research, get all the art that had been done for Twilight Hammer before this, and leverage that and take maybe 2 to 3 weeks tops to knock it out. There's all the art that we found. You'll notice it has some Twilight on it. It also has a hammer and some festive colors. And this dates back to Warcraft 2, and this is a Chris Metzen drawing. So this goes way back, but there was never any real kit made for them. So we didn't have much to start with, and the jobs of the art team becomes, how do we depict a culture that everybody's really seen already? I mean, we've already seen all these cultures, but how do we depict them as something new and different and give them sort of their own stamp? Well, there are a lot of cults in WoW, so we started with the approach we normally take, which is to use, give them a tent, a brazier, a couple of pots and pans to bang together, and some crazy magic stuff. There's a tent. This is crazy magic stuff. Notice the colors, we're grabbing at straws in a way, because we looked at the banner and we have a symbol and we have colors. So we started trying to pull the colors and see if that was maybe a good jumping off point. More crazy magic stuff. Magic and crazy stuff. And I show you this because even the smoke had that sort of rainbow color in it. The problem with the colors is we started to draw comparisons to another faction that's already in WoW. And we were not looking for a traveling rainbow circus of wicked intent. We needed something scarier for these guys. They're supposed to be the villains. So another angle we explored was the old god connection. Now, artists on WoW love old gods. They love Cthulhu. It's something every artist wants secretly to make Cthulhu. So immediately, the Cthulhu references start. This is not Max Rebo. I need you to know that. It's a faceless one. These lamps have the same faceless one sort of worked into it. And like I said, all artists like to make Cthulhu. This is my version. Not in the game, didn't make the cut. Another safe bet is to fall back and start making some barrels. And some crates, because every race on Azeroth has barrels and crates. Another crate, a magical crate. Now, we started making some furniture. It had sort of a gothic, Forsaken look almost to it. At this point, we started looking at the metal, thinking maybe the metal is going to be the angle that we follow. And here is classic Blizzard art direction. It's a wagon with giant knives on the front. It has bat wings, spikes on the wheels, and it's covered in blood, and they put a dragon head on the front just in case. It's perfect. Here we started using actual dragon parts, bones and wings. And then this was kind of a turning point here because we built out Dark Whisper Gorge, or rather designers set it up using a lot of this arch. And that's where we realized we really need a lot more for this faction. So at this point, the dungeon team started making some buildings to go along with it. And a sacrificial altar for sacrificing. And I like this one because it has sort of a whimsical top on it, and giant blades again, and scary wheels and blood. It looks like a happy murder wagon. And here you can see that well, they have carpets. The logo, or the corporate branding of Twilight's Hammer, is starting to appear everywhere. And here's a good look at it. We redesigned it to be a little slicker than the old one, so that's the one you see. And this is the final banner that you see in all the dungeons. And here you can see the props are starting to take on their own look. This is pretty much what you're seeing in the game now. It has the dragon thing going on with the scales. There's some purple fire, lots of knives and blades attached to it. And at this point, it comes about that Elementium for the Twilightians, or the Twilight Hammerians, is their sort of key mineral. It's like Serenite was in Lich King. Every culture needs sort of a birthmark, something that really identifies them, and we started to think that Elementium is going to be it for these guys. So one of the artists made this, which is like a demo of what Elementium ore could look like. It's a really expensive effect, and it would have blown up everybody's computer had we used it as is. Because when we like something in the game, we put it everywhere. So, like the Northrend Fog. It would have been like making armor sets out of Dalaran, which I like to call Dalaranium. So the engine guys had to write a special shader for us, and all we needed to do is take that and apply it to all the props that had been made already, which, as luck would have it, was all the props, all of them. So, and then that shader got used on Deathwing as well, and that's sort of a cross-pollination that the team does constantly. Well, it turns out that Twilight Hammer priests are supposed to summon this up from the ground, and the Gothic kind of sculpted look wasn't really appearing like something that had been spawned up. So we started thinking, well, this is like a forged version, and then there'll be more of an organic one that is the summoned stuff. And this is probably the first prop where we attempted to show a more organic, summoned up version, a barricade. And here is how it is now in the game. This is like a spire of summoned Elementium. And then as you get further into like the Twilight Highlands, you'll see more and more of this. Here you can see it wrapped around this horrible dragon drying thing. So to finally tie all this together, it's reason that the Twilight Hammer would have a more structured appearance back at their home base, or where they start, which is the Bastion of Twilight. And that's that, a dungeon. And then the further out they got out into like Twilight Highlands, you'd see more and more of the spawned up organic stuff, and you'd see the props that they had, or they don't call them props, but all their stuff that they brought with them in wagons covered with blood. Here is Twilight Hammer now as it is in the game. So this is Dark Whisper Gorge. And this is Twilight Highlands near the Citadel. and this is Deep Home. So while we're doing all these changes and this whole look is evolving, we're working on other cultures as well, such as the Wildhammer dwarves. Notice the names. They're very similar. So this led to some interesting mix-ups. Wildhammer dwarves, they like stone throwers, siege weapons, and they like griffins. They're griffin riders. The Twilight's Hammer likes none of that. So here is the Twilight's Hammer stone thrower. Not in the game. And the Twilight's Hammer griffin stand. That griffin just ruins the whole scary thing there. So now, as I promised you, and you can all leave after I say this, I'm going to show you the greatest prop ever made. And I know this because I voted on it, and this is what won.
All right, so I have a video that briefly showcases the development of our new player races. So here we have the old world Worgen. It was fierce, but it wasn't player character fierce. We updated it for Northrend, but it was mainly just a texture change. So these were great as mobs, but we needed to do something to re-envision them as player characters. So we spent time concepting what we thought the player Worgen should look like. And this was our first playable version. It was a good first pass, but it seemed to be lacking something. So we studied what we had done, identified what we felt like we were just missing on, and we modified it into this, our new final Worgen. So the goblins were much easier. They are so established in the game. We had this really old model to start with, and we had to find a way to breathe new life into it. Here's the new player model. Higher detailed mesh and textures, exaggerated features, a major graphics overhaul, but we retain the core elements that define being Goblin. Notice the variety of facial customization available. They have many dozens of combinations of ears, noses, and chins. Thank you.
So our lead animator, Steve Aguilar, couldn't be with us today, so I'm going to attempt to go through his presentation. This will show you how much I pay attention when we're putting these things together. I should also mention that in Blue's presentation, we don't show the Worgen female because we actually recently put a little more work into it, and it's not at a point where we're ready to show it yet, so that's why it was not in his presentation, in case anyone was wondering. All right, so let's look at animation. So the animation team is is responsible for not only animating characters and creatures, but also effects, or some of the effects we do for the game. This was a druid regrowth spell that Slim did. So this little guy we created for the StarCraft II Collector's Edition. And this is a good example of the partnership between animation and effects, where the animators will go through and make them look cool, and the effects guys will go in and make it look alive. This little guy, you're all gonna get. This is Deathwing Murky. This is really cool. This is our archaeology pet. So you notice he's Rochambeauing or rock, paper, scissors. When you run into another player in game that has one of these, you'll actually play off against one another and win or lose. So these are the new dances that we did for the Worgen and Goblins. This is the Tolvir. This is a new race that we created for Cataclysm. They're actually a stone skin Titan creation, but this is one of the skins that we did that's more of a flesh or a live version. This is the Etten. It's a giant creature you're going to run into kind of all over the place, but most prominently in Gilneas. So these are the Pygmies. I love these little guys. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of them in subsequent expansions, but we're going to see them all over the starting Goblin experience. Then we have pufferfish that act like pufferfish. Vashir is an enormous new zone, so we created a lot of aquatic sea creatures to fill up the area, like turtles. And I think that's it. So thanks, Steve. Thanks, animation team. On to Dungeon.
That one, yes.
So I wanted to show you a little behind-the-scenes look at how we create dungeons in our game, World of Warcraft. So let's start off with a screenshot from one of our newer dungeons, Old Doom. So if you were to take away the props, the lighting, the effects, the textures, and then you start to dumb down the shapes, basically what you have left to look at is, well, not that interesting. So how we get from that to this, to the final product, is a process of concepts, ideas, brainstorming, design layouts, and probably most importantly, the imagination of the creators, our teams. So you can start to break down the elements. Maybe. There we go. You can start to break down the elements, and each piece combines to make a cohesive imaginative part of the world. I think the funnest part for us is when we get to start brainstorming, taking the layout, and then come up with the ideas like these. As the 2D layout is created, it's the dungeon's responsibility to interpret what the frame is going to look like. I emphasize how transitory our dungeons can be. The end result is by far much more spectacular than what we first came up with, and that's saying something from those concepts. It's a little before and after shots, just the block out, and then the final version. So the dungeon team gathers reference from many resources. I'm having a hard time here. There we go. We take our research very seriously, and we like to study to make sure the colors work, get the right set of textures and materials. So easy, just go down to the old Home Depot. As well as making sure the structure fits with the culture kit. We also have to make sure that the scale is correct, so that every character, whether you're a gnome, a human, a blood elf, got to make sure that they fit through the door as well as be able to navigate the play space in the dungeon. We also like to draw what inspires us, spikes. And we like to give each other feedback, usually very maturely, take it well. I think one of the challenges we faced when we started working on Skywall, again, one of the new dungeons in Cataclysm, was how to make the buildings look like they floated and were emerging from the clouds. This idea created an effect that was made specifically for Skywall Dungeon. Here's some of the concepts. So awesome. So although it may look strange in the 3D program, the effect in the game gave us the look we were trying to go for. Our modeler went back and forth with the programmers to get just the right look, and a lot of trial and error. But I think they were pretty successful. The destructive force of Cataclysm gave us an opportunity to remodel 2 of our main cities, Orgrimmar and Stormwind. So we donned on our hard hats and went to work recreating Orgrimmar. Here's just a couple of before and after shots. You'll notice we kept the spikes in, probably added more to it, I'd say, by 120%. It's a little better. So as a dungeon lead, I like to encourage my guys to really involve themselves in the dungeon creation process, and hopefully that comes across when you play our dungeons. That's it. Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. My name is Gary Plattner. I'm the lead environment artist. On the environment team, our responsibility is for the exterior parts of the world. We're responsible for all the natural elements and all the things that make up all of that. So we have a lot of great tools that do that, a lot of great painting tools, and our editor is wonderful. But you have to keep in mind that every zone we've ever done is basically, it's not procedural. That means everything is pretty much done by hand. So when we start a new zone, we want to make sure that the entire zone looks as though one guy painted it, like it's a painted picture by one person, so it looks natural. Because when we start a new zone, we basically have nothing. We have a few Illustrator maps, but what we want to get and what we want to start with is a concept piece. This is our roadmap for the zone.
one of the most exciting parts of my job is to paint some of the concept images for the new zones that we develop. For example, Gilneas was one of my favorites. We wanted to make this place a home for the Worgen, and so the type of characters and culture that we had talked about needed to be kind of reflected in that environment. So, you know, my feeling was it should be kind of cold and rainy, forested, and kind of gloomy, like those werewolf movies that you've seen, old New England, Sleepy Hollow, that kind of Salem witch hunt type of thing. I also wanted to bring in, some German Black Forest kind of imagery to create kind of a gloomy place. You know, even though it's an alliance race, we wanted to give a little bit of spookiness, a little bit of kind of a Halloween flavor.
When we were starting Cataclysm, we realized there was so much stuff that we wanted to correct from the old game that we never had a chance to when we first shipped the game, and now that we have more technology and more tools available, we can go back now with this expansion and correct a lot of things that we always wanted to. One of the tasks we were planning to work on was the element trees for the starting area for the humans. And for that particular zone, we decided to overhaul the tree style, but also try to keep it in tune with the original element trees, so there's not a big contrast. So players that appreciate the old world can still hop in and feel like nothing's changed, but something looks nicer, and they don't know what it is.
One of the most difficult parts of making any of these zones is the lighting. It's very hard to do. I had to light everything with this light spheres that were difficult to move and hard to save. No zone is circular, so I just asked one of our programmers if I could just outline a zone and attach a light to it. And he said, you know what, I think we can do that. And he came up with this great tool, where here you can see Kalimdor, where I could just outline a zone and attach a light to it and throw some light spheres in there if I wanted to. This is huge for me. I thought it'd be kind of cool to show that off. Big change. Another big change we have is something we call Live Update, where here we are, I can paint inside the editor, but I can also see it happening live in-game at the same time. This is
previously
huge.
We would have to build the train, then get a build of the game, and then finally go run around in the train. Now we can simply push and pull mountains up and down while we have a character sitting right on top of the mountain or beside it, and we can instantly get that relationship. So it's been extremely useful just for setting up vistas, for creating POIs, landmarks, all of that sort of thing. It just gives us a really quick way to get feedback on what we're doing, and since we are building such large-scale features, I mean, it's just great. You know, we're moving huge amounts of terrain and geometry around. It's nice to have such immediate feedback.
Gus there was painting on something called a Cintiq. We also get to do all of the loading screens for any of the dungeons. We also get to do the character creation screens, and this year we got to do the login screen. What you're going to see next, this is a character creation screen that Dion Rogers did for the Worgen. So these screens have to load very quickly. So we're going to show you something quick that really helps that happen. Oh. Yes. That background is actually 6 high-res pictures that make it look 3D. I apologize for some people that I had to show you that. We also got to do the login screen. The login screens are very important. We want it to be very epic. It's the first thing you're going to see in the game, so we really worked hard on making this special. First, we wanted to do something like the Maelstrom, you know, big swirling water, and we thought that would be the way to go. Wasn't quite working out. I think there's a slide here coming up. We weren't sure we liked that. We thought we'd go with something more traditional, like a portal of some kind. So we thought we would look into some of the Twilight Hammer stuff and started to make a portal like that, and that's the direction we went in. These are some of the early concepts. And here's some progression shots. No one has ever seen this. Hardly anybody on the art team has seen this. So that was our final login screen. But hold on. Hold on. Thank you. Thank you. We liked this a lot, but then we didn't like it. We felt that nobody would really understand who the Twilight Hammer was. It's high-level content. You wouldn't even see it. So we actually started over. This was literally months ago, and we sat down and Metzen said, look, all I want is something black, something red, and something dragon. And we were like, well, that's not really our direction, but we'll look at what we've got. And we had that old desktop picture that has been around earlier this year of Deathwing on top of some building. And we're like, well, that's pretty cool. That makes a little more sense. Let's kind of look at something in that direction. And then we remember the cinematic just got finished where Deathwing lands on Stormwind. And we're like, well, that is a classic image. It's a classic fantasy dragon on top of a castle. The cinematic is going to end. You're going to see the login screen. Let's go with that. So we did a quick sketch, and we started working on a new login screen. This was literally weeks ago. You guys ready to see the final version? There it is. Beautiful. All right. This isn't shown anywhere at BlizzCon, so thanks for coming to this program. I also got a little behind-the-scenes version of this, just like the log of the character creation screen. This is a quick turnaround. We're only going to build what you see, so there's a lot of stuff missing, but it's interesting to look at. So I've shown you something great and ruined it at the same time. A lot of work went into this. Thank you. To the cinematics team for helping us do this, and real special thanks to Arjun Prakash and Chase Levin for helping us film that.
So I think we still have a few minutes if you guys have any questions. We're going to be taking a couple of questions. Do we have time?
Hold this for 1 second, please.
And everybody, and we're done.
They're going to ask questions. 1 second.
Oh, just a line.
Frozen.
Did a good
Am
job.
I good
Eric.
to go whenever?
Yep.
Okay. My daughter has been drawing since she was 2 years old. Now she's 12. She's an incredible artist, and the only want she has in life is to become a Blizzard employee and artist. What would your advice be to have an artist, go through in college to get where you guys are?
That's a noble goal for sure. My advice, and you guys feel free to disagree with me on this one, but I really don't think that, man, this is going to sound bad, but I really don't think that college, what school you go to, really matters that much. The things that we look for are talent, obviously, first and foremost. Passion and personality probably come in second, and it's hard to choose which one of those goes over the other. But if she's really focused on coming to Blizzard and working on a Blizzard game, then it really just comes down to know the style. Like, have her play these games, have her draw it. Like, I think, you know, most of our artists learned from just drawing things that they liked and things that they were into, and then got to a point where they did it for a living. So if you're a fan, then that's probably good. Just keep her on that track, and she should be good to go.
Okay, so first of all, thanks. All of the art that is involved in these games has always been a huge inspiration for anybody that likes to actually do anything in the type of art. I have a little more specific on the actual portfolios. For somebody who's interested in concept art and trying to get into that industry, if you guys like to see things that are original in themselves but can obviously fit into the worlds that already exist, or if you guys like to see more of replication to show that we understand that theme.
Definitely a combination of the two. It's important to show that you have an understanding for the style, but it's also, everyone that we bring in, we want to bring in people that have a unique look at what we're doing and can bring something different to and develop our style. It's also very important, and a lot of people overlook the fact that this concept art is going to need to be used to create three-dimensional art. So having an understanding of three-dimensional art when you're concepting is very important. And while you may not have to be a modeler or a texture artist necessarily, learning that skill and being able to take your concepts into that space is important, and will show us that you understand when you're thinking of these things how they're actually going to play out when we build them and texture them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Hi. So there's been some talk on the forums and even some response from the Blues that the art team was going to take a graphical upgrade on the vanilla playable races, as far as redoing the humans, you know, redoing the trolls, the texture upgrade, poly count. And I know that wasn't going to make launch of Cataclysm, but I heard that it was in the works. Could you give us an update on that?
Sure. I completely agree. I think we all agree that our player characters are one of the things that's most behind as far as updating goes. So we do have plans to do it. When exactly that's going to happen, I can't tell you. And actually, I don't know. But we're actually in progress on reconcepting some of that stuff, some of the player characters, and definitely feel like we want to roll it out sooner than later so that everything feels consistent in the world.
We have time for about one or two more questions.
Hi. I love what you've been doing with the changes in Orgrimmar, having it transition to the new forms, and even the damage that you've done now with Stormwind. And I'm wondering now, since these models are in the system, and so you have the ability to change them more easily than this whole project, say for the next expansion, would we see a further upgrade where Orgrimmar would be completed and Stormwind would be repaired now that the whole Deathwing story is over at that point?
Wendy, do you want to answer that one?
Sure, I can answer that. We do have plans, because we're able to patch up new artwork. You will see kind of a progression of that. And, you know, as new stories come across, who knows, they might get destroyed again. So you never know.
Okay, so I have a mini pet question. If you're ever going to make like a mini Zealot that can have a three-way fight with Grunty and the Zergling?
Sure, yeah, I don't know. We don't have plans for it, but that's cool. That's a cool idea.
Thank you again for all the art that you've done. It's fantastic. I just want another round of applause because it's awesome.
Thank you.
Quick
Artists
question.
are in the audience, so thank them. It's them.
I don't know if it was brought up a while ago, but there's kind of these iconic things that different character classes wear, such as, you know, you've got the druid with the horns, paladins with their librams. I know that librams were changed and relics were changed and all that stuff in a recent patch. Was it ever going to be introduced where like paladins could actually have that book? Like every, you know, race of every, you know, paladin would have that book and it would be used, or you know, because you have the item, but you don't see it.
Yeah, so. Totally. Yeah, we are. One of the things that I want to focus on coming up in the future is not only just that, but also what we do with our armor sets, because I think that's, along with player characters, that's getting a little tired. So we definitely want to approach those things at the same time, like make sure that all of our armor sets are feeling very distinct and updated, but that we're also incorporating things like totems and librams so that it feels specific to your class, and you get this item and it's actually on your character, you can see it, and it doesn't just feel like an icon in your bar or whatever. So yes.
Yeah.
That's all time we have. Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft Art panel. Coming up next on this stage at 4:30, we have the Blizzard Sound panel. Let's give one last round of applause to our lead artist.